Hi, in this video we're going to talk about solving equations graphically, and I'm going to introduce you to some free online software and how we might use that software to actually graph our equations so we don't have to do it by hand. Now, we've been talking about how to solve equations, and when we do it symbolically, it means that we isolate our variable. Okay, so for example, I might subtract 3x each side, subtract the 4 each side. Over here I get negative 6 equals x. 4x minus 3x is just x. And over here I get negative 6. And that would be my solution. And that's fine, and that works great in these simple cases. And linearly, symbolically, which means using these tools, usually works. But when we get to more complicated equations, we might want to use a tool such as graphing, and it might be a little easier, and it also is a nice way of checking our answer. So when that happens, what we can do, and this always works for any equation, whether we have a linear equation or something else, is we can let one side of the equation be a function. So I'm going to let this side be f of x. And then we can let the other side of our equation be a second function. We'll call that g of x. And I can graph f of x and I can graph g of x, and they will be equal when the two graphs intersect, right? Two things are equal when they're the same values. And so when this graph is the same value as this graph, the two lines should intersect. And these aren't the graphs of these two lines, but this is just to show you. If this was my f of x and this was my g of x, they'd be equal right here. And what I would do is read off the corresponding x value. Let's say it's 2. So I say x equals 2 would be my solution. Okay? All right, so graphing, we obviously could probably graph these by hand, but with modern technology, we're probably not going to want to. So what I'm going to introduce you to is an online graphing tool. It's called GeoGebra. So you go to www.geogebra. It is a combination of geometry and algebra together, GeoGebra, and it is a .org site, not a .com. Now, when you get in there, you can see that there's lots of things that you can download, or you can use these things on the website without even downloading them. What I'm going to show you how to do is how to download the software. Now, you can use the basic graphing calculator, but I want to introduce you to the actual software so that you can use it throughout your math career, even when we get to harder things. So I'm going to encourage you to download the Classic 6, and this you can download to Windows, to Mac, Chrome. You can even get versions of it on your phone or on your iPad. So once you click which operating system you're in, then there'll be a run. I'm not going to go through that because I already have it downloaded to my computer, but once you get it downloaded to your computer, it will stay there. And what happens is it puts an icon, GeoGebra, notice it here, on your desktop, and now you can just click on that icon and the software will pop up. So you don't have to have access to the internet once you get the software downloaded. Okay. All right, and now what you'll see when it first pops up is that we have menus here. You'll see these buttons. You'll see that there's an algebra window. Our algebra work will appear there, and that there is a graphing window here. The top menus are for things like saving, sharing, exporting. You can go through these. The one that I use a lot initially is I like to go to options, font size, and make my font bigger, and that just helps my students see what I'm doing. Now you will notice that I put my mouse in this graphing area, and I'm just using my mouse to move the graph around, and that's what's really cool about this graphing software, is that you can just pick things up and drag them. If you've got a touch screen, you can zoom in and out with your touch screen. If you've got a mouse, you can zoom in and out with the roller ball if that's an option. Otherwise, you can right click, hit zoom, and zoom in and out that way. So several ways to manipulate your graph. Okay. You will see we went through this window, these menus to with our basic commands, but underneath there you'll see these squares that maybe are not as familiar. The main ones we're going to use are the last one that actually helps us move our graph around. So if I click on that one, it lets me move my graph around. If I click on move, it lets me move my graph around, but it also lets me move and drag objects. And then I'll show you in a minute, we're going to use this one right here. And then as we go through different things in this class, I'll show you some other features. But the main thing I want to show you today is how to use it to graph those functions. Like if we're solving something graphically. All right. Now you'll notice down here at the bottom is the input line, and that's what we're going to use to input our functions. All right. And now GeoGebra loves function notation, so we're going to go with that. We're going to enter one function as this side, f of x equals 3x minus 2. So this will be exactly what I type in that input line in GeoGebra. F of x equals 3x minus 2. Now GeoGebra will only let you use x and y, which is fine. So if you had other variables like s and t, you'd want to just use x and y instead. So there is my first graph, and now notice I can just make this window bigger. Another cool thing is notice here it's labeled at F, so I know that this is F, and it's color coordinated everything. Green, green, okay? You'll notice a big blue dot next to your function, and that's just your on and off button. If it's blue, it's on the graph. If I click it, it's off the graph. And then I can put it back on. Now we're going to enter our second function that we were looking at today, 4x plus 4, and I said let's call that g of x. So g of x equals 4x plus 4. And yes, you need to name them different things. Otherwise, it will write over f of x. Okay. And now again, it's color coordinated. Red is g of x, and I see it here. And now I said that when we solve something graphically, we want to look for that point of intersection. Well, notice on my graph it's not displayed, but that's where my moving comes in, and I can zoom in and out to see where that point is exactly. Okay, so it looks like they intersect at -6, -20. And so my answer would be x equals -6, because remember when we solve something simultaneously, we look for the x value where the two intersect. And you can see that on this graph. Another cool feature though, if maybe this isn't exactly a number or it's really far off, I don't necessarily have to be looking at it. Notice what I can do. Each of these squares up here has another drop-down menu if you go to the bottom right corner. This upside down triangle, if I click on it, has more options. And the one I'm going to show you how to use today is intersect. So I'm just going to click intersect. And now notice how my mouse turns to a hand, and I can click on the G function and notice how it highlighted G. And then I'm going to click on the F function and notice that it tells me the point of intersection is -6, -20. And now if I go over here and move my graph down, it's put a point on there. And it's confirmed that that is the solution. These two things are equal when x equals -6, y equals -20. And that's exactly what we got over here. Okay, let's try one more example. We had talked about when we had things like this, we needed to combine like terms and those types of things. But really, when we solve graphically, GeoGebra will do it for us. And all you need to remember is we need to let one side of the equation be f of x and one side of the equation be g of x. what I'm going to do is graph each as if they are two different functions, and then I look for the point of intersection. And again, we're going to use our GeoGebra software. Okay. All right, so if I want to do a new sheet, I can just do File, New Window. I'm not going to. I'm just going to delete these off. I can just click on them and then right-click and delete. Otherwise, you can get a whole new window, whatever works best for you. So over here, I'm going to let f of x equal minus 3x, whoops, plus 4 minus 7. So notice I don't have to combine my like terms. I could have, right? It's not that hard. But just for ease of use, I'm just going to punch it in as is. And on the other side, I'm going to let g of x equal my minus 5x minus 3. Okay. And you can see that, again, it's color coordinated. Blue is F, green is, orange is G. All right. And if I want to find my point of intersection, I can go to the second drop down, click intersect, click on the blue line, click on the orange line, and it tells me they intersect at 0, -3. So my solution would be x equals 0. Let's see if we get that if we solve this, what we call symbolically. Okay. All right, so first I would combine my like terms. I get minus 3x, minus 3 equals minus 5x minus 3. And then I would add 3x each side, add 3 each side. I'd get 0 equals minus 2x. Divide by minus 2, divide by minus 2, x would equal 0. Remember, 0 over any number is 0. Any number over 0 is undefined. And that's another good thing about graphing it and checking it. If you're confused whether or not this answer is 0 or undefined, we could come over here. If the two lines intersect, there has to be a solution. And we see that they intersect at x equals 0, so that is the solution. So again, I hope this helps you get started solving equations graphically. That's what we call it. We've done linear examples, and later on we'll do more complicated examples where we have quadratics or higher order polynomials. For now, remember, go to geogebra.org and download the software of your choice and play around with it and get started graphing things and determining the solution that way.